The glory days of television, when you did 3 shows a year and took the whole of the rest of the time to do rehearsals and setup. We're joined by Fizz Waters on the couch. A Girl and a Gun coming up next.
Girl and a Gun, episode 19, recorded on the 12th of the 9th, 2013. Fizz Waters.
All you need to make a movie is a girl and a gun. Come along and join the party while we stare at the sun.
Hello and welcome to A Girl and a Gun, the show for filmmakers and content creators. I'm Phil Moore and I'm joined today by 2 special guests. I have John Mazels as usual and Fizz Waters with us today. Hello Fizz.
Hello.
Fiona otherwise.
Yes.
Where does Fizz come from?
It actually comes from primary school.
We're starting with the nickname.
I didn't like Fiona. It was a bit posh for where I was at school. So there was Fizzy, Jazzy and Dizzy.
So you became Fizzy.
Fizz stuck. Yeah.
Right. Fiona actually, if you've looked at the credits for the show, she is one of our teachers here at SIFA. In fact, she's usually back there behind the glass, supervising the students in the control room, making sure...
Yeah, you can see how well...
Now.
So there's no one
really
back there
see
at
how
the
well that
moment.
works,
They're on their
can't
own. See how we go. And also, the other half of your name, Waters.
Waters.
You have a famous brother.
I do.
Who's that?
John Waters.
John Waters, Aussie John
Australian,
Waters.
Yes, Aussie John Waters.
As in play school.
Yes.
In play school, John Waters.
And Gomez Adams really recently.
Yes, which was great. And they didn't push it enough, so it just disappeared.
But he looked
fab.
he looked like a really good Gomez
yeah.
Adams.
Yeah, but he's been a stalwart of the Australian industry as an actor for many years.
Yes,
Yeah,
I haven't lived here all the time, but I've always kept, obviously.
Clearly not.
Yes.
So you actually, originally from England, the
Yes.
reason you're on the couch with us today is,
Yes.
and the reason you're a teacher here, is you have a background in television,
Yes.
at Thames TV in particular.
Yes.
And I want to talk about some of that background, that history with you. How did you start at Thames? How did you get into this industry?
Funnily enough, I was at school still, and I went and worked in the canteen at Thames Television. I had a tea trolley. I did my trolley rounds.
You were a tea lady.
I was a tea lady.
Oh.
And then I looked around and I thought, oh, that looks like a nice job. And it was the floor assistant, and they always wore headphones and everything. That looks like a nice job. I think I could do that.
Yeah.
And I applied for it, and they said, oh, we don't use girls doing that sort of thing.
How long ago? Well, no.
A long time
ago.
I mean, seriously, in those days, did they seriously did not allow women to do those roles?
They didn't not allow them, it was just that nobody had ever done it before. And so the women in the office where they were making the decision said, she needs a go at it. Somebody at the BBC had already done it, but I was the first at Thames Television to...
So let's get this right. At that time, it would have been very unusual to have a woman running the floor.
Oh, my word, yes.
And presumably pretty unusual to have a woman running cameras. But
Yep.
probably not unusual to have directors and
No,
certainly
that's
not
right,
DAs, because
producers and-
you're
yeah.
still, you know...
Exactly, yes.
Sad, isn't it?
It's bizarre, yeah.
So you became a floor assistant, did you?
A floor assistant. It was actually called call boy still then.
You were a call boy.
I was a call boy.
Right.
And they said, oh, are you a call girl? Oh, first time I've heard that
Hilarious,
today.
yes.
And and then I'd say, well, not at this money, no. And, and then eventually they brought in the
Discrimination.
Yeah,
That one.
It's easy for me to say. And I became known as floor assistant, and then I became a floor manager.
Floor manager. And that's what you've been doing a lot of your career in Thames, yeah? Floor manager?
Yes, floor manager, and that sort of segued into first assistant, not as in a movie, but within television, using, film and multi-camera.
So, okay, television. What kind of shows are we talking about?
The Benny Hill show would have been one that I did an awful lot of. The Bill, in its infancy, and then a little bit later on also. Rumpole of the Baily, if you remember that.
Loved that when it was on,
yeah.
yes.
I loved it.
Oh, there's Benny Hill now. Let's have a look at a bit of Benny Hill. Go on, put it up.
I think there's only a shot of him, actually. I don't know if there's anything else.
Put it up. There we go.
There, oh, here he is.
That's just the music.
Yeah,
That's all we can
that's
find,
just
is
a
it?
still, I think.
Okay, that's an extraordinarily young-looking Benny Hill.
It is, it is.
How old would he have been in that shot?
Yeah.
He would probably have only been about 50, well, mid-50s, I would have thought.
What, in that shot?
Yeah, yeah.
He looked like he was 20.
He was a very young-looking fellow.
Yeah.
And he had his completely full head of hair, all the way until
Damn
the
him!
end.
Damn him!
And yeah, he never looked very old.
So
suppose he might do
Benny
now.
Hill, dramas like The Bill,
Bill, Rumpole of the Baily.
Rumpole, Kenny Everett you mentioned,
Kenny
another
Everett,
comedian.
when I was still a baby, because that's an awfully long time ago. I was floor assistant on that.
So you really bounced around between comedy and drama, like different kinds of shows a lot, yeah?
Yeah.
What was the experience working on those kinds of shows? Like Benny Hill's like a sketch show.
That was, yes,
and
absolutely.
then The Bill is a drama, TV drama.
And you do things on film. All the exteriors were done on film on the Benny Hill show. And,
Like 16 mil.
Yeah, 16. If you were doing special effects, then 30, 32. We'll get the Mitchell out.
Right.
But yeah, 16 and with the speed, so that you did, you know.
Well, his famous chases.
Yes, they're all 6 frames.
6 frames a second.
6, and then
Where the girls are chasing
then
him
when
around.
it was just a little sort of walking aroundy bit, he would choose the speed because he knew a film camera inside out, and he'd say, I think we'll do this one at 16 or 18, sometimes 20, just to get that little edge.
And he just knew how it was going to look.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he could act backwards. He was brilliant at acting backwards, so reverse print stuff he made look completely amazing. He just knew his stuff, you know.
Well, give us an example of a reverse shot. Like what sort of things did he do?
Well, he could walk backwards, making everything look, you know how people do that now?
Have we got an example of him going backwards?
Have you?
I'm getting a word from the control room. There's a clip they want to show. Here we go. It's a little
there
bit
we
of
go.
something of Benny in action. So this is the 6 frames a second type stuff.
Yeah, that's looking very, very better. Now, that would be about 14 there. Gosh, that's old. That's 14 or 16, you know, prison clothes.
Now, you're on location with Benny through all of this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. As first
That was
AD
all done
effectively on set.
just a drive away from the studios, yeah. Yeah, so it was, and that was like a different world as well. Then when you're back in the studio, you know, it's like you can contain everything, but out on film,
So it's like single camera on location, shooting a film.
Yes.
In the studio, multi-camera to tape.
multi-camera to tape.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it was a sequence in a Kenny Everett, like you know, the Dancing Girls or whatever, the director for that show would record on all machine. He would get 4 machines, and he would record and spend a week in the edit suite.
Oh, he'd do an isolated recording for every camera.
Absolutely,
Right.
yeah.
And then
They were
post-edit.
a slave and yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, which I found bizarre. I should just learn your stuff, mate.
Well, how long did it take them to make an episode back then?
An episode, whatever, Kenny Everett,
Kenny Everett was a half-hour show, I think.
Yeah.
And Benny was like 50 minutes or something.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you do. He only did 3 shows a year. And
Benny Hill did.
Yeah. So you do all your filming in September because it was cooling down, and he was a very hot person, didn't like to get. So you do all the filming. So you do 3 weeks of filming, 1 week for each episode, each show.
Yeah.
And then you'd go and do. In sort of February, you do 2 weeks rehearsal, I think, and then into the studio for 1 week for all the peripheral bits, and then at the end of that week, you'd have the show.
Okay, so he had a lot more
night.
time than I thought he might have, because he took his time writing it and preparing it and doing it.
Yeah, well, he would spend the year previous doing that and sending all the music to Ronnie Aldrich to say, oh, well, this is what I mean, and, you know, writing things on napkins. And that's all that, yeah.
It's a very, very long process. How much of it was done in front of a live audience?
He would do the opening song, then you'd show a few other things, and then he'd do a couple of sketches live, and then there'd be perhaps sometimes a dance number live. Right. And then he would do another couple of sketches, but you'd just roll in all the other stuff.
Was there much rehearsal?
About 2 weeks, I'd say, we would do outside to do all that, yeah.
Contrasting with that, Kenny Everett, was he a faster worker?
He was just straight into the studio and do everything there. I mean, we went out and did some pop numbers, you know, on a beach somewhere, I think we went once.
I remember you telling me a story about early use of some of the equipment for green screen, trying to get some optical
Yes.
matting and stuff going on.
Yes, Ultimat. I actually was trying to get Ultimat used by Benny Hill, and so we went through this whole morning of using the Ultimat and him saying it doesn't really look very good, and he was quite right. It didn't look very good because they were using chroma key, and they hadn't plugged in the Ultimat machine. And I was really good at doing Ultimat and chroma key, but and I just said, well, I think you're all mad. You've just blown it now. He'll never use it again, and he didn't.
Oh, okay. So this new bit of gear there, and they just never ended up using it.
No, and I don't know why. And they, well, it's beyond me.
So where Kenny Everett used pretty much
anything
that was spawned from the planet Three.
That's right.
Because I remember him doing a lot of that kind of stuff.
Which was a howl round which would have sent you completely bonkers, and the TDs were always saying, "Oh no, you can't do the pictures,"
and
he'd go, "Oh, it doesn't matter." The producer was.
So going to something like the Bill and Rumpole, which are these regular drama shows, was that a very different experience? The kind of production schedule, the way it worked.
Pretty much, yes. I mean, I did I would do the scheduling for the drama. You couldn't do it for the Benny Hill show because it just happened. But, for a drama, you would actually have to do what you were going to shoot on what day, so your exteriors and everything. And I would spend a while doing that. You'd have pre-production for quite a while. And for Rumpole of the Baily, you have to consider things like, you know, you have an old actor laddie there, and you have to be careful about him, and he wasn't quite well, and sometimes. I had John Gielgud in one episode of something. Yes, Leo, yeah. And we had John Gielgud in an episode of something that was very similar to that. It was written by John Mortimer. And so I phoned him and I said, "Oh, Sir John, good morning. It'd be very nice to meet you next week. I've booked a car for you for 8 o'clock to pick you up so that we can start you at 10 o'clock in the morning." And he said, "Oh, mate, I don't very much like getting up before 10. I said, "Oh, righto then, Sir John. No problem. How are we going to do this?" But we got around it somehow.
Just reschedule the whole thing.
Yeah. I wanted to book him over 2 days, but he was £10,000 before leaving the house, so...
Right, so let's try to get it all in one.
Had some idea of maybe what his worth was to the production.
Yes.
For these productions, you as a floor manager and a production manager in the studio, were these sort of like really completely different productions to deliver, or was it the same crew, different crew?
Regular crews,
Yeah.
and you'd come across crews that were good, crews that weren't so good.
Right.
But most of the time, sort of down to the floor manager in a way to make them all work.
Right,
properly.
but it's such completely different productions. So how does the discipline work on the set, for a comedy compared to a drama?
Yeah, well, you have to play it by ear, really. And there was one experience I had, which was I was working with there's a director who's, I won't name because that would be indiscreet, Peter Sasty, right, who used to work for Hammer Horror Films, and he had a reputation for being a bit of a beast of a director.
Okay.
And I worked with him and I thought, and he said, "I don't like it being noisy on the studio floor." So everybody was frightened of this bloke. So I said, "Righto." And in the morning, the TD came down and said, "Right, I'm going to have a word with the crew." And I said, "No, I would like it if you didn't, actually, because I'm going to have a word with them." So I did, and I don't know, I must have been, I don't know what it was. That studio, you could hear a pin drop for 2 days. Never descended into chatter or anything. They were just all on my side, I don't know. It was...
And because the director had said, "This is how I want it to be."
And he was happy.
Sort of, but he hadn't said it out loud. He just had it as his reputation. And, yeah.
And it worked, everything went...
Everything went completely smoothly, and everybody was saying, "Oh, gosh, you're so good." I was thinking, I didn't do anything.
But you did. You managed the situation and you read the people correctly.
Maybe,
and that must be, as much as keeping everybody out and actually keeping the studio floor quiet, That ability to
sort of,
deal
yeah.
with people and communicate correctly must be one of the real skills of being a floor manager.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just sort of all happened. It was very, I was
Okay.
quite
We're
thrilled.
actually, I'm already
Way
getting
over
a wind
time.
up. So, briefly, I just wanted to finally, what made you leave Thames ultimately?
I could see the writing on the wall.
What writing was that?
Well, it was just everything was changing. The bean counters came in, that was step one, and started total costing, which meant that you had to count everything that you did. And I just thought, well, I can see this is... And I don't know, I wanted to go travelling.
Right.
So
the
I
culture
did.
was
I then
changing.
went freelance. I went travelling for a while and ran out of money, so I had to come home and go freelance.
Well, as you said, you're an employee. Most people were employees, BBC, Thames, and the industry was going freelance, yeah?
Absolutely, and there are people in there who were institutionalised, absolutely. I mean, you must know that as well from everybody.
I've never been
something that happens.
institutionalised, but I understand what you're saying.
But you know what I mean?
Yes.
People thinking that there was...
Yeah.
They were staying there till the gold watch, and the gold watch wasn't coming anymore. And I just thought, well, I'll get out before everybody else
And you
does.
scarpered over here to Australia.
And then eventually, yes, I did.
And joined us here, so thank you very much for that.
Thanks.
We actually now have another in our series of tutorials with Karel Seegers on screenwriting. So let's run that now. Hello, welcome to part 7 in our series on screenwriting with Karel Seegers. Hello, Karel.
Hi, Phil.
Now, we've covered character in some depth and structure, the 3-act structure. Now, you talked a bit about how scenes can have a 3-act structure as well. I want to get a bit more about how do you write a good scene?
It's, yeah, you know, scene writing, some people are really good at that, and I find it difficult, but that's why I co-write. That's why I co-write with people who are good at scene writing. You know, in Australia, I think a lot of people are very good at that.
What do you think you're good at writing?
I'm good at the bigger picture, and
Right.
I'm good at doing the rewrite and the polish. So I do the bigger picture and the really
So
detailed
some
stuff.
people are just really good at that one scene,
Yeah.
that one moment.
Yeah. So how do you write a scene? Well, you know, you need to know again, what is the goal? What needs to be achieved? What does the scene need to achieve within your overall story? What does the character want to achieve in that scene? And what does each of the characters want?
So would you agree that every scene is kind of like a little mini 3-act structure?
Absolutely, it's a
Beginning,
mini
middle,
story. It's a mini story. Sometimes the scene can be only 1 act or 2 acts. Sometimes you have scenes that are 3 acts. You know, I analyze some scenes in class that have a wonderful, not just 3-act structure, that have a full hero's journey in them. An amazing scene in the movie with Tom Hanks, Charlie Wilson's War, where the character of, what's his name? I've lost the name. It doesn't matter. Where Gus is the character, the name of the character. He's introduced in an amazing scene where 2 characters are supposed to apologize to each other. That's how the scene starts. But it gets completely out of control, and it's so much fun.
Okay. I know it was difficult for you to come in here hat in hand. That's not the kind of upbringing, I guess is the word I'm looking for. It's not the kind of man you are. I understand that. I'm not looking to humiliate you or exact a price in any way, so why don't you just apologize? We'll call it water under the dam and we'll go about our business.
Excuse me, what the f***?
What?
What the f*** are you talking about?
Claire George said you were coming in here to apologize.
I'm supposed to come in here so you could apologize to me.
According to whom?
Claire George.
You told me to go f myself. I'm supposed to apologize to you?
Also, water goes over a dam and under a bridge, you poncy schoolboy.
Clearly there's been a miscommunication between Claire George and somebody.
But all it needs to do really is to get us some information across, okay? Now each of these characters, again, they went in with a goal, right? One went in to listen to the other's apology, and so did the other. So
So they're both waiting for the other to apologise.
There you go, so you've got conflict immediately. And it was written as a mini 3-act structure with a beautiful setup, an amazing conflict, and then a climax and a little tag, a little resolution at the end. So that's a good scene. Now, if you would structure every scene like that, your rhythm would become boring, you see. So the length of your scenes needs to vary depending on what the story requires.
Although one would argue that on the whole, a scene in a feature film shouldn't be too long. There are exceptions, obviously, like Tarantino.
Yeah.
Very long scenes
Yeah.
in one room, 2 guys talking. But on average, 3 to 4 pages, 3 to 4 minutes.
Less than that. On average, 2 No more than 2 on average.
Yeah, 3 to 4 as a maximum. I'm
That's
saying,
right.
yes.
So, and your key scenes, there's about 5 key scenes: inciting incident, end of act 1, midpoint, end of act 2, and your climax. That can be a little bit longer. All the others, keep them short. Now, how do you write them? Because ultimately, when we talk about scene writing, we're talking about the script. At this stage, we have the story sorted out. We're going to write it in our...
So we've sort of, I like to use it in a spreadsheet, and there's other tools that do this, where you actually write down what each scene is going to be roughly about.
Yep.
You work out your character journey and your plot, but you haven't written the words yet.
Correct.
So now we're sitting down, we're writing the words, the actual scene,
That's
the
right.
dialogue
Yeah.
and the action.
That's right. And that you do in Final Draft or Celtex or Screenwriter or Scrivener. And you've got to write the introduction. Where are we? That's the most important thing. Scene heading and describe the setting. Then you describe the characters that are in the scene, and then you describe what they do, and then you start with the dialogue. So those things need to be pretty much present. Even if you're a very minimalistic writer, you can set up your setting in a few words, your characters in a few words, and you get down to the action. But you need to give us something. Some people just start writing dialogue. That doesn't work, because a film is still visual. We need to know what to imagine.
So to try and show the reader, because we're talking about readers at this point with a screenplay, what they're meant to be imagining, what the scene looks like, without using too many words to do that, without too much verbose action.
That's right. And there must be tension. Every single scene must have conflict. That can be minor conflict, that can be big conflict. You know, you say you have a conflict where you have a recording in a television studio and one of the cameramen must cough. That's conflict. That's a tremendous conflict because you got to be quiet. You know, what are you going to do about that? There's a scene right there. I'd want to see that.
I think we just did.
I think we did. I think we lost the cameraman.
Also, every scene has a different purpose for being in the film.
Sure.
You say some can be big action, some can be small action.
Yeah.
But there's exposition to get across sometimes. There's character development that you want to bring out. There's other kinds of conflicts.
Well, you say character development. We've kind of covered that if the viewer missed this. You know, the character development itself is action. So you need to show that through the conflict again, through what they do. And what they do must happen within a setup of conflict. Dramatic
I think the
tension.
key is, though, you've got to know what is this scene about and then just make it about that.
That's right.
Don't try not to have anything that's redundant or going off on tangents.
Absolutely, absolutely. Be very focused. And you know, again, we go back to the goal. The goal, a story is always about a character wanting something and having difficulty getting it. So ask this question about your scene. Who's the main character in that scene? What do they want? Why is it hard?
Which may not be the main character of your film.
It should be most of the time, but not
yes,
always.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. But your character should be there. Your main character should be in that scene. Can be driven by another character. Now, another character comes in with this obsessive drive to achieve something that is in conflict with what we know the main character wants.
And this is one of those rules. You know, every scene is either your main character is in it or they're being talked about, or it's about them in some way.
Correct.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, we need, if you're writing a scene, at all times you need to be aware of what is the central conflict. What do the characters want? And you know, write it down. Write it down for each character. What do they want? And that's how actors also get into their scene. What is my motivation? The answer is your paycheck.
Although that said, I mean, we're talking about structure and really knowing this before you go in, having a good solid plan. I would also say that it's okay if you don't quite know what the scene's going to be yet, because you're just vomiting this out. This is just the first draft. You could write a 10, 15-page version of this scene and think, okay, fine, that's more than I need. Somewhere in there is what I'm trying to say, and you'll work that out. So you don't have to know right up front.
Well, we did some. We talked about the software in the first episode that will help you figuring out what the scene needs to achieve. So you need to have an idea roughly what.
Got to have an idea, but things change. So I've often find your characters say, "No, I want to do this,"
That's true.
And they take you off on very interesting tangents sometimes, which may end up becoming the real story you should be trying to write.
Or they may end up on the cutting room.
Or on the cutting room floor. Yeah. You won't know till you start writing it. Karel Segers, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
See you next time on our next instalment in our series on screenwriting with Karel Segers. There we go. I think we have a pick my brain question that hopefully we can all speak to.
I love the way you say that.
Yes?
You have no idea, do you?
I have no idea.
No idea.
Let's sort of something out.
We'll get the question.
Let's run the bumper and see if we actually have a question. Let's run that now. And my director is going to tell me what is the best age to get into the film industry. There we go.
Whoa.
The best age, as young as possible, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Two would be a good age to get in, because by the time you're 3 or 4, you could be established and then be building a really good career, making a lot of money. So that would be my go.
Well, I was 16.
Yeah?
I had my 17th birthday on the first week I worked as a floor assistant.
So, yeah, I mean, you're legal when you're...
That's cool.
You know, in terms of...
Then I moved on.
In terms of being legal for payment and tax purposes and stuff, it's 18 in this country, etc., etc. But you can start younger than that, obviously. And I do encourage people to start as young as possible.
Absolutely.
You can have apprentices at 16, at 14. We're not talking about acting at this point, where you could start possibly at 2 years of age.
Yes.
But, you know, realistically, if you want to be behind the camera, once you're a teenager or even possibly younger, start apprenticing, start hanging around the sets if you can and learn it.
Oh, definitely. Just learn everything.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, these days, you can certainly get your hands on a camera. Indeed, you know, here is a camera, and you could be out shooting and editing your own stuff pretty much as soon as you're able to use a keyboard. The trick is, and we'll just sort of say this for young people who might be watching this program, the trick is not how young are you or how old are you before you're allowed to use this, but can you pick up some additional skills and tips along the way? Because if you just do it yourself and you don't go and talk to other people about it, you will miss a lot of learning experience that might help you move along.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for just getting out there and doing it, and I encourage people to just get out there and do it, and that's all you need. There's a camera in there. You know, get a better microphone if you can, but just get out and shoot something. But yes, we had this question way back about should you go to film school? There's a lot to be learned from being on a set, being in the experience.
Should you go to film school?
Coming to a film school to learn.
Of course you should go to film school, Phil.
But there's a lot you can do even before then. Film school or being on set with, if you have a friend or a brother or a family member or someone who's working in television or film, get on those sets if you can.
Just be inquisitive and be curious.
Yeah.
And if you don't, make your own set. Get out there and make something. Gather your friends together and build it together. And then once you're old enough to come to a place like this, try to do that.
I like the way you say make your own set, you know, like in the 50s when everybody did everything out of cardboard.
Yes.
Well, no, gather your friends, shoot in the backyard, you know.
How many sets did you work on that were made out of cardboard? By 10-year-olds. Or did they just look like that?
Sometimes they did, yeah.
I mean, that bit of Benny Hill we saw before, that's on location, obviously. So it's a real front door, it's a real house there.
Yeah.
It's a real cardboard box.
It's a real cardboard box. But was there much set building back then?
Oh, yes.
You know, for the dance numbers and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, absolutely. And little bits for the sketches, you know.
Did you, in your experience back then when you started out, were there a lot of other younger men and women trying to get into the TV industry like you at that age?
Do you know what? I think I'm probably like one of the last to get through as a, I don't know, as somebody coming in
like the young tea lady getting into the industry.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
You really can't go from the mailroom to be managing director anymore,
but you
can you?
used to be able to.
From the tea lady.
You're talking about Greg Thingamajig.
No, I'm just talking about in general.
Yeah.
So the consensus is basically as young as possible. Get out there and start it. Thank you very much, Fiona, for joining us on the couch today.
My pleasure.
Thank you again, John Mazels. If you want to reach us, you can tweet us at A Girl and a Gun. Our email is veronica@agirlandagun.tv. If you have a Pick My Brain question, please email us. But for now, that is a wrap. Thank you all.
All you need to make a movie is a girl and a gun. Come along and join the party while we stare at the sun.
That's enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think of me?
Yes, I think that's good. Can I help?
And we didn't even talk football.
No, we didn't.
Damn it!
What are you doing? Stop mucking around with the colour.
Making my colour go.